if that would be the case that we join, well, my response would be that you caused this. Look at the mirror.
So that is the president of Finland discussing a potential joining or application to join NATO in the wake of Russia's war on Ukraine. And his response to Vladimir Putin, very upset about that possibility. Finland and Russia, by the way, share about an 820-mile long border. And both Finland and now Sweden are considering joining NATO because of this latest aggression from Russia. So on Thursday, Finland's president, that was Sauli Niinisto, that's not how you say it, and Prime Minister Sanna Marin, who is very cool, went clubbing, I like her anyway, strongly backed Finland's NATO membership. NATO membership would strengthen Finland's security, they said in a joint statement. As a member of NATO, Finland would strengthen the entire defense alliance. Finland must apply for NATO membership without delay. Over in Sweden, again, Sweden doesn't share a border with Russia, does share a border with Finland. There's a little more tepid over there. Right now, Sweden's ruling party, the Social Democrats, are having internal debates about reversing their long-held stance opposing NATO membership, paving the way for Sweden to make its NATO aspirations known within the coming days. Finland moved first, but the two are closely coordinating and will likely apply for NATO membership in tandem. So again, they are gonna do stuff together. They're gonna move as a unit. One is not as convinced. The two countries have been, although part of the EU, militaristically non-aligned. And again, one of the consequences of this is that Russia cut off energy supplies to Finland. Finland gets about 10% of its energy from Russia. So that was one of the consequences, but there could be more. So this is from Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. On Thursday, Russia's foreign ministry said that Helsinki must be aware of the consequences of its move and threatened a corresponding symmetrical response. And they even, I think, set some kind of like military technical something. But before I kick it to you, Anna, let's just look at how the people on the ground are feeling, not just politicians. So over in Finland, support for NATO typically hovered in the 20% or so range. In January in 2022, less than 30% of the Finnish public was in favor of NATO membership. After Russia's invasion, it rose to 53% to an incredible 76% in May. Huge majority there. Then over in Sweden, however, it's a little bit less. But still, support for joining NATO has jumped by double digits since January to about 57%, according to April polls. It's not as dramatic as it is in Finland. Again, perhaps because of that border. But we kind of could have seen this coming. Anna, thoughts on this now, what seems like NATO expansion potentially?
Yeah, I think Putin really nailed it. The one thing that he claimed to want to prevent is likely to happen now. And while I still have my critiques in regard to NATO, I do now understand and acknowledge that there is a purpose for it. My before Russia's invasion, my worldview, my thoughts on NATO was, listen, it is considered provocative by Russia. Russia isn't a threat. Like, I don't think that Russia is going to go against its own economic self-interest in invading the countries that we think it's going to invade. Turns out Putin's not a rational actor, is willing to essentially engage in a war that is counterproductive for his own country, for his own stated goals. So if I were Finland, or if I were a politician in Finland or Sweden, yeah, I would look at what's happening to Ukraine right now and ask myself, would this happen if Ukraine had already been part of NATO?
Right.
And the likelihood is very unlikely. And so I would definitely want to be part of this alliance, specifically to serve as a deterrent for Russian aggression. That's not to say that NATO is perfect. That's not to at all whitewash the issues with NATO, and its actions in the past. But just thinking about it logically, a rational actor would look at this situation and say, what can I do to protect my own country. And Finland and Sweden have decided to, really do a 180 on this issue and, try to join the alliance.
Right. And I would agree with you on it makes absolute rational sense. And I'm not going to sit here in a country that doesn't have a border with a belligerent nation. We're that belligerent nation. We've got enough of that going on inside our borders, and say that it doesn't seem like it makes sense for the people and the politics of this country. I will say that, painting Russia into a corner is pretty much what's happening. They've painted themselves into a corner. And I would love to see NATO serve more of a function than just militaristic. And I know it does. I know there is some non-military, but intelligence services, thwarting disinformation, that kind of stuff that I do think is good. But ultimately, I'm like, this has to be much more international and and also demilitarized to a certain degree. And so I just wonder, what is the purpose? It does kind of feel like a Russian it is a Russia containment apparatus at this point, which clearly is necessary. But I would obviously hope to avoid any kind of actual all and out war. And I think we're all agreed on that. I did want to point out though, Finland and Sweden have been everything but partners in NATO. Everything but members of NATO, but they've been partners. So they become strong partners with NATO. They're basically as close as a country can get to the alliance without formally being in it. They do military exercises together, share some intelligence. Both Sweden and Finland supported NATO's mission in Afghanistan. Oops. And NATO's open door policy remained open to Sweden and Finland, but it was not something either had to pursue unless the security situation in Europe drastically shifted, which is exactly what happened when Russia began threatening Ukraine. Their most recent countries to join NATO were Montenegro and Northern Macedonia. It took them, I believe, 20 and 18 months each, or 18 and 20 months. So it's not an immediate. This application would take a while. It's not a yes, all of a sudden you're in NATO. But if you're looking down the road a couple years here as to when Russia gets finally booted out of Ukraine or not, or takes control of the eastern part of it, that 2-year waiting period might be kicking in just the right time if you're trying to keep your country safe. I wanted to also just point out, because I didn't know the history of Finland and Russia, and I'm like, what's the history there? It is interesting that Russia has obviously bullied Finland around before. So under Joseph Stalin's Red Army, Finland was attacked in 1939 and became known as the Winter War, which Finland fought off the Soviet invasion attempt on its own. Finland's then pleas for Western allies for military assistance went unanswered, resulting in Helsinki allying itself with Nazi Germany in the Second World War against the Soviet Union between 1941 and 1944. Remember how Americans love to play sort of heroes in that war, but took a while for the United States specifically to get involved in that war. And Finland, I guess, needed an ally. So then after the Cold War ended, eventually Finland was able to step out of Russia's shadow and join the European Union in 1995, as well as the Eurozone in 1999. But again, we're talking about a country relatively small, known for licorice. I'm like, Finland's not really on the cutting edge here. And what I really hope, and this is what my hope for NATO, this is gonna sound so pie in the sky, but it really is around the biggest cause of international conflict and war, which is energy and gas. And can we create a new way? Can there be leadership in these countries that are now feeling so pressed because they are no longer able to rely on Russian gas to move to things like renewable energies, wind, solar, etc., rather than, which of course I know we all talk about, fracking, nuclear, and coal. Any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Aside from joining military alliances, I think, for anyone who has a more international frame of mind, internationalist frame of mind, we need to focus on not being reliant on these questionable foreign governments due to their access or their their natural resources, their fossil fuels and stuff like that. If we could be more energy dependent, not through doing more of our own drilling and fracking, which is destroying the planet, but by forming new or alternative forms of energy, clean energy, we'd be in a far better place. And by the way, I mean, that innovation, if the United States was smart enough, we would really be leading the charge on that innovation. Instead, we have China leading the charge when it comes to things like solar panels, for instance.
Yep.
And we're leaving jobs on the table. We're leaving manufacturing jobs on the table as a result of that. And there's an economic component to it that would be much more beneficial, aside from the foreign policy implications as well.
Oh, but the oil barons and CEOs shan't allow that. They would rather us get into way more hot wars if it means they can jack up prices and that there's a run on oil. Renewables might lead to things like democracy and real security, so can't have that.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.